If you can call me Sam, I'll call you Al, because this is Vizier Please, a heinous trip at Warp 5. My name is Joseph.
And I'm your co-host. Sorry. And I'm your co-star from that other sci-fi show we were in, Peter.
Peter, before we launch into this week's episode, I want to make sure that I shout out the fan of the week, as far as I'm concerned.
He gets the front parking spot.
He does. Fan of the week, Troy, from the Trauma Support Group. We've never talked about Troy before, because Troy's a very quiet man. He doesn't like to post. But I still now know that he's internalized a deep Vizier Please wisdom, because he posted to remind us that the first time he posted back in 2019, he told us straight up that we were using the term bottle episode incorrectly, and then when we really meant filler episodes, and only reposted that just as a gotcha, as a consequence of the bottle episode discourse that we have opened up in the last few weeks. Troy, you're still wrong, but you're still the fan of the week, because that is amazing. That is 15 out of 10 executive level thinking. You're gonna wind up with a corner office here on Vizier Please at this rate.
Game respect game.
Absolutely. This is the kind of following that we have enjoyed cultivating over the years. So Troy, you're the platonic ideal of the Vizier Please fan this week.
The poster child of shittiness. 2 thumbs up.
Speaking of shittiness, what did we watch this week?
Oh boy. Season 1, episode 21, Detained. Thank God that the powers that be in Enterprise structured season 1 the way they did, and that they put Detained and
Oasis.
Which one was Oasis?
Acquisition.
That's how fucking crazy it is that, like, these past couple episodes have been so shallow, they're immediately falling off. Oasis is the one with the hologram crew.
Yeah, the one we did last week, yeah.
Acquisition, which was the Ferengi idiot circus. Generations. And then Rogue Planet, I have written in my notes it was trash, and as I see what's coming after it,
it's like...
it's significantly less trash.
It's not weighing so heavily on your conscience anymore.
I mean, Fusion's really the high point for me, and that was, we had serious gripes because of the treatment of DePaul in that one. Like, I'm very curious what the writing process looked like through Enterprise for them to hit what I think is such a bad stint. And I would have called it the Trilogy of Terror, but how many did I just list off here? More than
4 or 5.
The Pentemvirate of Terror. I don't know where we're going from here, but I hope to God it's up, because this is serious quality drop off we've been seeing.
I mean, this is why no one was around by the time the show got good, right? Like, Enterprise doesn't have the bad reputation it has for no reason. It was rough starting out.
It wasn't rough starting off. Starting out, it was okay to really good.
Well, I mean, by starting, I mean season 1. Like, when your landing strip has this many fucking potholes in it, people stop watching your show, and they don't come back.
And for good reason. I cannot blame anybody who starts hitting the eject button around now.
So for the audience, something you should probably know about how we have approached our recording this evening is that Peter wanted to do a skit, and the skit was going to be us simulating a conversation between Archer and Admiral Forrest to, in a way, summarize all of the batshit decision-making that goes into this episode to make the plot work. But we decided after we kind of sketched out what that would look like that we couldn't, because it would basically supplant everything we were going to say about the entire episode. That we would have nothing to talk about if we shotgunned out all of our content like that. It was
the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah, first time we're like, we can't do this. Why? Because then what the fuck are we going to talk about? Just we're going to repeat our... It's like, hey, remember that skit? Yeah, all right, we're done. You know, here's that great theme song. We're out of here. They brought in Dean Stockwell for this, obviously, which is something they clearly had a mind to do from the start, is to bring him in because, hey, Quantum Leap reunion. These guys know how to work with each other. That'll be great. So this is the one they picked to bring him in for. It's obviously a big continuity episode for the meta plot of the show. It brings up shit all the way going back to the pilot. It was meant to be a big deal. They also decided to make this a message episode, as Memory Alpha puts it, which is a good way of describing it. It is such a on the fucking nose episode about Japanese internment camps during World War II in the United States. They actually directly reference that factoid by the third act. Like, they're not even letting you have the intellectual space to draw that conclusion on your own. They don't trust you, right? Like, Chitrell was more respectful of your intelligence, that it was about Oppenheimer dealing with the morality of having created the atomic bomb via metaphor. No, they're not even going to allow you the space to see that for yourself. They're just going to fucking tell you that's what it's about, the most heavy-handed way possible. And to make the plot work, it requires Jonathan Archer to initiate Janeway levels of crazy decision making. Like, just the stupidest things he could possibly do in each possible circumstance.
It's one for the books, and I don't know if I can call it. I certainly wouldn't call it the worst episode of the season.
That's still Acquisition. It's not close.
I would not be surprised if Acquisition comes off as being the worst episode of the first two seasons. That was bad. And I mean, there were people in the Facebook group, the trauma support group, that were going up to bat for that thing.
We have some misguided souls. They need to learn from Troy. They're way off base. They need to listen to the employee, the listener of the week. Yeah.
Been a while since we've had a jailbreak episode, or has it?
I mean, Acquisition was a jailbreak episode, I'd say.
And for the record, too,
Oasis was a jailbreak episode, too, because Paul was captured. So we've had 3 in a row, really.
Yeah. Metaphorically speaking, yeah. And going back to Acquisition, I do want to say on air that, that totally should have just been Trip waking up, going to the transporter room, and then transporting all the Ferengi into the brig. Or maybe into the wall of the brig for a fun industrial accident there. But yeah,
just really tried to put him in the brig, and it just didn't quite. Sorry, Cap. I don't. The one that looks like Jeffrey Combs wound up inside the bars.
I'd really like to investigate this alien race and find out more about them, but we've just committed some very heinous Cronenberg crimes to them. So let's just dump them off on the nearest M-class planet.
A transporter never seen their kind before, so I believe their brains are now in their butts. They may be permanently damaged.
Getting into this turd, we're waking up with everybody knocked the fuck out yet again. It's Mayweather and it's Archer laying on the floor of a little hut, and Mayweather gets up and gives us the second super half-assed effort to wake up another crew member. Right up there with Acquisition. He get half a shake.
Yeah. Hey.
Archer kind of...
Hey, Cat. Hey. Oh, okay, I'll just look around.
Let me tell you what. We talked a lot in Voyager about the need to put subdermal communicators under people's skins to track them when they get lost or whatever.
And then they do it, and then it makes you
very angry. Sorry. Please, my blood pressure, please.
I know, we're middle-aged now. We gotta watch that.
You got all these fucking pockets on these jumpsuits. Maybe you take this one over the left shoulder and you put some smelling salts in there, okay? Because I feel like there's been...
Especially for Archer, given all the head wounds, man. You know he's going to need them.
Absolutely.
It's like fucking Rocky out there. He needs to be ready to come out the corner. Like Apollo Creed. The bell's about to ring, bro. You got to get ready.
There's at least, I want to say 3 times now that everybody's just been knocked the fuck out. It's time to adapt the technology.
What a report back to Starfleet Command that's going to be. Captain Archer, what's it like to be out in deep space? Well, it turns out you be rendered unconscious a lot. Like everyone.
It would stink if it's not your thing, but luckily Starfleet psychology department really did a great job placing me, a masochist, as the captain of the Enterprise. Everything has been great. I'm enjoying exploring all these brave new concussions.
It becomes obvious to the viewer that they're in a prison. And as mentioned, what we're going to find out over the course of the episode is this very much is on the nose Japanese internment. This is Suliban that are apparently in this camp. They were at one point residents of this part of space as immigrants. They were voluntold to go into these camps after the Cabal, the bad Suliban that have been fucking with the Enterprise this season, started fucking with this civilization. And they're held in what you would call semi-reasonable detention. They've got families, they're grow food, water, no one's like torturing them. But it's also very much prison and dehumanizing in the way that any sort of confinement is.
They've got families getting split up.
Yeah, there's a system, but the system still kind of exists at the whim of the state, so it's not really like due process. Like, I this is happening because right at the time this episode was produced, the sort of political reckoning over Japanese internment had become more urgent because it was 60 years since it had started. And there were efforts to try and do some kind of reparations or official apologies or whatever for the surviving people who were interred because of the, like America does. America, we fuck things up less than you think, but more than you hope, right? Like, it probably wasn't a great idea, the whole taking away your civil liberties, even though you're citizens thing. Our bad. Let's, say sorry. So this was produced when this was kind of like something that was going on in the political dynamics of the country, was readdressing this.
This is April 24th, 2002 initial air date. And I wanted to actually bring that up, was like, because some of this is kind of like, why do they have to name this specifically? Borderline eye rolly, like, come on, very clearly we see what was going on here. Does this have to be named? But like, when this came out, was that super public knowledge to the U.S. at the time? And I guess also in a certain way, there's a lot of parallels in this episode because you got the Taliban.
I think that was less on the writers' minds because they go whole hog into war on terrorist stuff later. This, I think, was an idea they had prior to that because of the fact that this was now something that Americans were more aware of, that they frankly weren't. Like, I didn't know much about these tournaments until literally this stuff really started coming up.
You know what? No, I take that back. We learned about that in senior history.
Yeah, like there was like sorry, I know like this might not be the most interesting thing, but if you're not from the United States, this might all be all new information. It came up in history that it happened, but like what that meant was never given context until there was like this whole reckoning over it. Because, it happened in 41, the Pearl Harbor happened in 41. The internment basically was kicked off in 42, and this was 60 years later. And George Takei was actually somebody that was in the internment camps, and clearly there's a Trek connection to that and that sort of thing. So there was this sense of it that everyone became more aware of, that maybe had faded over the decades. And that's why it felt very trendy to do.
Speaking of writers, story by Rick Berman and Bram Branagh, directed by David Livingston, our old dear friend David. What do we say the difference between story and teleplay? Because teleplay is Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong. With Rick Berman on everything, along with Braga, is it just like they're sitting there popping off ideas in executive offices, and they've got like a legal pad with a bunch of like hooks, and then they actually go to like the real writer's room and say, all right, turn this into a script? Is that how it works?
Essentially, yes. There might be somebody in the V'ger Please orbit that can define this a little bit more clearly. My understanding is story credits are typically reserved for the people that have the ideas that germinate the sort of the basis of the story, and the teleplay, and that's a specific choice of words, right? Like, this is where you're actually like defining the dialogue, stage directions, who does what, where, the structure, right? So when that labor gets divided up over a single script, that's where these descriptors come in, because sometimes it's just written by, right? Because one person did everything. this is a circumstance where clearly Berman and Braga had the idea for the story, and then, like you said, it kind of like went into the hands of other writers who then laid out on a technical level exactly how it's all going to be structured.
So we figure out we're in jail, and Archer has Mayweather. Woe is me that Mayweather is Archer's prison buddy on this one.
Yeah. Anyone else would have been better.
I remember when we really started going to town on Garrett Wong, and you called him the worst Berman Trek actor, and then you said Mayweather's the number 2 worst character portrayal out there, and I didn't understand really where you were coming from, but I see it now, and I almost might say that Kim might actually be portrayed better consistently than what we see with Mayweather. And I know
I just
people
think
are
Garrett Wong personally annoys me, so that's why I think I'm biased against him. Whereas Anthony Montgomery is just, he's just a nice guy. But from pure acting ability,
I don't even know if it's just acting. I think the way the character is written, I think Kim's just a better character overall. Like this, everything about it stinks, and I regret having him on screen. And again, I think this Anthony guy seems like a nice dude, and nothing personal against him. It's just, man, it slogs down these fucking scenes.
I really wish it would have been Hoshi that would have stuck down in there with him.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna sit there and try and fucking finger point directly at it, like he gets a little bit of juicy stuff when he's like, hey, you can't basically judge people by the color of their skin and what race they are. She could have had that exact same dialogue, and it would have been perfectly applicable to the situation. And yeah, if you're gonna do a message episode, then fucking do the message episode.
And Hoshi would have, I think, been a better choice simply because it would have provided a much better interface for the cultural understanding or sussing out the Suliban and someone who would be like more interested in that because of her role on the ship and her personal interests. And also like, this episode lacked a certain soft skills. Like there wasn't a very good balance with trying to bring in the humanity into the situation at all in the prison camp. And I think Hoshi might have been the right character to do that. But it is what it is. We're stuck with a wooden plank and also Archer. And it's pretty much right away that they get hauled in front of Dean Stockwell, right?
Well, yeah, we get introduced to the bad guys of the week, and it's going to be some early history, standing collar, jackbooted fascists
with just a tiny little thing on their fucking bridge of their nose.
They're like a little horseshoe.
Yeah, just this little thing, little Bajoran, tiny little thing, basically. And they are therefore aliens. They're Tandarans. And we meet Dean Stockwell's character, Colonel Grat, who immediately has a little pad where he's dialing up information. So they definitely went for the all of the
hand link Ziggy connection. Yes,
all of the quantum leap connection they could. What we will find out is that Colonel Grat is extraordinarily reasonable. This man is actually like, oh, you guys just kind of wandered into the wrong part of space. That's why you got zapped. Actually, we can get you out of here. We got a justice process, but it'll take a few days.
Pretty heavy on the bureaucracy around here, which I would think is something that you guys could appreciate, especially the Vulcan flying your ship.
He's like straight up with him, like, yeah, I know the Suliban, right? Like, I read your database on your shuttlecraft, man. Like, you guys running into them too, huh? You want to like, let's I can sympathize with what's going on here.
Side note, how much information's on this fucking shuttlecraft? Because it seems like
apparently everything.
It's got everything: sensitive mission logs, personal logs, captain's log entry, sensor readings, you name it. It's on these. I guess I can't really say ultra disposable shuttle pods, but often almost destroyed little proto death carts. I would like by the end of this there to be a report somewhere And, part of like it should be policy, it should be protocol. Maybe the away team should check in every 10 minutes. Maybe they should scan the landing zone, even if it's a friendly area. Maybe we shouldn't keep all of our mission logs.
Like, note to self: do not put a ton of incriminating information in the shuttle pods.
Note to self: put password on computer.
Yes, make sure password is not password one. It turns
God,
out
sex,
aliens,
or love.
turns out aliens are good at cracking the code.
I saw a password and I was like, oh, I'm fucked. And then I accidentally hit the space bar and it just went forward. So, Dean Stockwell in this. What was the right way to use Dean Stockwell? You think they would have put Dean Stockwell in that fucking stupid Ferengi makeup for acquisition and had him act like a fucking rodeo clown?
No. Now, like, the idea of him being an antagonist for an episode makes sense. And specifically that, like, I actually like the idea that it's this guy who is a potential ally but is distasteful. Like, that's an interesting place to go with any story, right? Just very generically, that if he's like this, he's this colonel of this, planet's militia, and they're like super paranoid, and therefore he has like an amazing intelligence network, and he has all this information that would be useful to Archer, and he's got to figure out what he's willing to do, if he's willing to fucking deal with this guy in order to get this information that could be important to his mission, right? Or understanding what the fuck was going on with the whole temporal Cold War thing that he seems to be in the middle of, or he likes it or not. And Dean Stockwell, because he's got that kind of authoritative sense to him in his acting, he's pretty good at seemingly like being in charge and giving off that energy. Yeah, I could see using him like that. He's not really the problem in this episode at all.
No.
Like, I think he's well used, and the character he is playing is a good one. Maybe if you really wanted to lean into the quantum leap, you would have made him some sort of academic from Earth or something that they like wants to study something with them, and like
I would have liked to see him as a co-prisoner, kind of heckling Archer as they're locked up as cellmates, but ultimately a help, or maybe kind of I don't know, the same Tom Bergeron space merchanty, which, by the way, Google is unrelenting with the fucking Dancing with the Stars bullshit.
You unleash the algorithm on yourself, sir.
One search for Tom Bergeron, and it has been dozens and dozens of articles shoved into my feed. I'm furious.
Listen, all I have to say about Dancing with the Stars is that after they put Christy Yamaguchi on one of those early seasons, I knew that it was just rigged, right? Like, how dare you put on a figure skater on a dancing competition against amateurs and not expect her to clean up? That is bullshit. I'll never forgive them for that. I've stopped watching. I've boycotted ever since.
So, Dean Stockwell, what's his name? Colonel Gratt? Was that what it is?
Yes,
Major
Colonel Gratt.
Here's what's going on for these knockoff humans. The Suliban, and this is some cool world building, we will find out, had an ecological disaster or something that basically made their homeworld uninhabitable. And the majority of all of them that survived the collapse of the planet were transitory, migrant, whatever, out. And some of them continue to be transient, and a bunch of them just said, fuck it, we're going to set up shop in whatever areas we're in. And things seem to be working pretty honky-dory. We find out that the lead Suliban character in this episode actually was from the same homeworld as like the Clancy, what's his name? Clancy
the
Thomas.
chief guard, the major, Major Dickhead Bald Spot. Again, right back to the Space Texan episode. Anybody with the bald spot, evil authoritarian figure. So everything was going real good until, as you said, the Cabal, which is the the genetically augmented mercenaries of shadowy future figures. Correct. Nailed it. You got it?
started, you know, doing the bidding of future evil or evil guys of the future. And that has not only brought them into conflict with Starfleet to whatever degree that's currently at, but around these parts, shit's pretty serious.
Yeah. Grad goes on to say that like whole ships and colonies have been destroyed by the Cabal. Like they are a serious enemy that has caused them serious pain. Now, again, the parallels to what they're trying to draw are intense, right? Like if this is supposed to be Japanese internment, well, guess what? There was a huge flow of Japanese immigrants into the West Coast, and them and their descendants were American citizens, and they were integrated into living on the West Coast. And then terrible attack happened, and thousands of people died, and were involved in the Second World War. And you're like, maybe everyone needs to go on a fun sleepaway camp. And by fun, I mean indefinite internment, and by sleepaway camp, I mean in the desert. And so they do try to like strike that balance by trying to make the threat of the Cabal serious enough that detaining all of the Suliban seem reasonable. The thing is, in the real life thing, it was not reasonable because it's not like space magic. Everything was much better, could be much better understood even in the 1940s, and that it was not actually a good thing to do. This, you're talking about space magic time bullshit with genetic engineering and fucking shape shifting and being able to squeeze underneath fucking doors like you're the goddamn Slender Man. Like this is on a different level. This is like space horror bullshit. Like being paranoid of this is much more rational. So
You and I are both D&D guys.
yeah,
You introduce that doppelganger antagonist.
no, everyone's gonna have knives out. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if I can trust you, or did the DM tell you just to pretend that, you know, like who's the bad guy? So I get where he's coming.
I do. Like they accidentally make the bad guy seem way too rational because they think that they've got it all fucking packaged up so perfectly for this real life parallel they want to do, except the stakes are way out of line.
I mean, Grat even goes on to say, you know, I understand this camp is terrible. I don't want this to be here. But when all these attacks happened, we had 17 Suliban civilians murdered by, you know, pitchfork and torch mobs the first day alone. Like, this is happening for their protection as well as our own. It sucks, and the sooner we zap these Cabal guys, the sooner everybody gets to go back to regular world. And I know that you and I have a bad habit of always kind of sympathizing with the devil in Enterprise, but they make it way too easy.
Habit. It's a habit we've had our whole adult lives.
And specifically in writing, a sympathetic villain is the best villain. That's the way you have to do it to make it come off well. But the flip side is your hero needs to not be a fucking moron. And that is the balance that the Enterprise writing staff just can't seem to get their hands around. You know, you take the space dicks customers going up against what do we say their names were? Dittos? The
Dittos.
Slug Pokemon. You've got this fucking internment camp out here going against like power leveled shapeshifter time mercenaries who are also, you know, trying to blow Enterprise up occasionally. And they keep positioning the Starfleet characters to, I don't know, hit this weird wall of self-righteousness that I think just you lose the ability to sympathize with them.
Yeah, you do, because their decision making becomes just more and more chaotic and unreasonable. Because what happens after this conversation, which seems, you know, pretty rational, pretty normal, the guy's coming off as a little like bureaucraty, but seems to vibe on some things that we've seen. And Archer is, you know, like Mayweather's all pissed they got to stay there for 3 days like a fucking child. He acts like the fucking kid in the back of the Winnebago. You just want to smack upside the head for like the first 2 acts. But Archer seems to accept it, and you know they're just like in their cell eating their fucking goo, and then they want to get some more water. So Archer goes out and kind of like has a stiff conversation with one of the Suliban named Danik, who's like the lead Suliban for the episode, and accidentally gets him in trouble that he's gonna like spend the night in isolation or something. And it's like supposed to be the first clue that something bad is happening here. It's like, yeah, you're in fucking prison, bro. It's like the guy didn't actually get beat and he was back out the next night. Like, as far as prison stories go, that's light, man. Like, compare that to The Shoot. Like, this
That's
is
what I was getting to. Like, this certainly isn't Club Med, but it's not The Shoot.
Yeah. This is minimum security prison. You know,
nobody's getting their throat slit over some fun-sized Snickers in here. All right,
and they're growing like leeks and stuff. They got their like fresh vegetables and all this. Like, everyone seems to be not thriving but surviving well. You know what I mean? And the plot from here is in terms of what's in the internment camp is about Archer having these conversations with Danik, and then eventually Mayweather with another Suliban named Sajin, where they are figuring out that these guys are not part of the Cabal. They don't want to be here. The system kind of sucks. They're being, some
families have been torn apart because of this.
Yeah, and
what's been 3 years since they've been in this thing?
Yeah, and the authorities are not being very responsive, and they've got their own suspicions that like they would like to just like nuke the place from orbit and then bounce and not have to worry about it anymore. And Archer immediately, without a single conversation with another character, not Mayweather, not Danik, not DePaul, no one, 100% backs the Suliban's position within the prison and refuses in any way to cooperate or speak reason to Dean Stockwell for the rest of the episode.
He gets pulled back up with Grat. And Grat goes, hey, I understand you were involved in an altercation last night that someone had to go into isolation for the night. You should have taken my advice to keep your head down out there. I wanted to talk to you about this problem we're having with the Suliban. Here's some more exposition stuff we've already covered. What do you know about him? Oh, I don't know anything about him. This is Archer, right? You can take this story and you can put it out as the internment camp and the disadvantaged population and the overzealous government, and that's one thing. But when you go, all right, here's the biggest threat to Enterprise so far, and it has been the Suliban temporal war that has now been proven because you had Daniels, right? You've been in a fist fight in the Helix. All of the
Daniels super tech on board,
the cloak and dagger ship with the Klingon Empire, and like them trying to draw them in. Forrest is involved. Like this is the big plot for Enterprise so far lurking out there. These are the big bads. You've seen like the shadowy Tomorrow person.
They gave you the cheese that Porthos just ended up shitting all over your quarters with.
Yeah.
Silik's a bad dude. He's asking, what do you know about this bad dude? And you're like, fuck you. Like, really? Him. Yeah.
Silik, we've had a big problem with this guy. Have they said anything to you about the temporal war? Here's a bunch of inside baseball that like you and I, we might not be BFF, but the enemy of my enemy is a friend, or at least, hey, let's have a quick information swap. Maybe you might be able to learn some stuff too. They're doing genetic testing on these shapeshifters that lets them quickly ascertain who and who is not a Suliban, which if you remember back to the Space Pilgrim episode, you had fucking Silik on the ship fucking around. So, I get Archer not being like, oh my God, let's be best friends. Can I sleep in your room? And, we're going to have fucking dinner dates together or whatever. But I would say the bare minimum, the reasonable thing is like, okay, well, let's have this conversation, because so far Starfleet's been pretty lucky in that all of the Suliban fuckery has been limited to Enterprise. But what Dean Stockwell's talking about, like massive acts of terrorism, colonies wiped out, ships blown up, this blah 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 blah. Like this dude's got serious losses, and
he's got real cause to be paranoid and concerned about these people, he does know the difference between, like, I've got these Suliban in this camp because I know they're not involved and I need to protect them from the consequences of all this bullshit that's happened. But we know the real threat is out there. We should talk about it because we can help each other. And if you're going to go down the route of not having Archer play ball with this guy, I understand that as a narrative choice, but you've got to give me something to explain why.
Have them walk into a room where the Suliban have their skulls cut off and there's like electrodes going into people's brains and they're doing like, cosmetics aerosol testing on their eyeballs and like other straight up villainous shit.
You've got to have the Dean Stockwell people over the moral event horizon, right? Like, you have to have them go over the moral event horizon to rationalize that, or something that they are able to be told, some other better circumstance that can come about of doing the jailbreak instead, right? That would have been the other option of like, hey, Archer, if you can get us out of here, we can help you with this or that. We can get you this,
Yes.
inside scoop or something like that. Like, if you're not going to take the very reasonable offer from the reasonable jackbooted thug, then you need to have a reason for some other alternative that isn't just but my morality, right?
That thug needs to have like a chain sword for a stick, or the Suliban that you are basically entering into an act of war with these guys on behalf of the on behalf of Starfleet. The Suliban prisoners need to have a gold-plated carrot.
Or and that, God, that's the other thing. The idea that they basically blow this prison up and it's like, this is not consequence free. You just got into a shooting match with a civilization you just fucking met over some people that were being mildly oppressed. Like, not like you had to save their lives, not you had to intervene. There were serious consequences.
Let's wrap up the plot overview real quick here before we start getting into like expanded what's wrong with this. So Dean Stockwell's like, hey, listen, let's talk about this. Archer, no, I don't know anything about that. And he goes, okay, well, I just caught you in a big lie because here's your fucking personal logs. And now you're showing me that I can't trust you. And maybe there might be alternative reasons why you're here and all this other paranoia shit. Which, hey, who else was super paranoid, bordering on unreasonable, Joe? Was it the Andorians?
In fact, it was.
Who actually did beat the fuck out of him and treat him really poorly and like do all sorts of crazy terrorist shit, and he cut them all the fucking slack in the world, ultimately befriending him. Like, this Archer, Kathy Janeway was just nuts all over the place. But like Archer, the more, I don't know, the bigger the stakes, the stupider he gets.
Yeah.
And so, dear Doctor, I'm not going to harp on it, but like an entire fucking world is going to die. Oh, shucks. Well, my morality, fuck them. We're going to let this play out this way. Hey, here's fucking massive acts of terrorism and people dying and all this other shit. Well, I don't like being strong-armed. Like, even Mayweather has a fucking conversation with him shortly after this meeting with Grat, where Mayweather's like, dude, why don't we just tell him, like, no, my morals.
I don't like being told to do things.
Not only, yes, well, let's talk about that. Not only am I not going to assist him, because I don't like being told what to do. Remember when a certain direct supervisor said, Earth can't be getting involved in interspecies conflicts? Remember that?
Yeah. Direct words from his boss.
Not only am I not going to advance our own agenda, I'm going to
start shit with people we don't know, and that the consequences are not going to therefore be predictable, and who know where our homeworld is, because they have clearly downloaded all the information. So what happens, John, when you decide to do a strafing bombing run on this prison and bounce all these people out, that they show up in force knocking on Mars like, hey, what's up? your boy came and fucked our shit up, so we're gonna fuck your shit up. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? The fuck are you doing? Now, mind you, they don't seem like they're very good good fighting, because apparently they are felled by Enterprise's shitty torpedoes. So
Yeah, the first time for that.
yeah, aside from the Nausicaans, it's like the only time they've like clowned anybody.
Dean Stockwell gets Enterprise on the phone at a certain point, and he's trying to talk to DePaul, but of course you've got the ever emotional Trip over there popping his fucking mouth off.
We
Says,
should
hey,
just
listen,
jailbreak. We should
Yeah.
just jailbreak them right now.
hey, here's what's going on. It's going to be 3 days. We're going to transport him over. You're welcome to go to the home world. Maybe take a tour, check it out. You know, meet some new people, do your exploration thing. DePaul's like, okay, well, you know what? You're an alien species. We should play by your rules. She even lays that right on Tucker. If you want to explore alien customs, you need to respect their laws. Seems like great things. I really like the idea of the Vulcan lawyer. Like, what a great character concept that's got to be.
Oh, Jesus. That guy, anal retentive, would not even begin to describe a Vulcan lawyer.
That's the reoccurring character I want to see as the Vulcan lawyer that like has to come and frequently bail.
Joy would absolutely evaporate in any room that person would be in.
And like they have to consistently bring him into like lobby on behalf of imprisoned crew members as they meet new things. You know, of course, that plan doesn't hold, and Enterprise ends up tracing the signal back to the prison colony. They fly over, they use the transporter, which, remember, hey, we got one of these things. They beam down a communicator. Hey, Cap, we're here to get you. You let me know when. We're going to beam you right up. No, we can't.
Not yet. Bring guns.
No. What did Archer say? Earth has to be getting involved with interspecies. That's what he said, right? Yeah, cool. Hey, beam down explosives. Beam down the fucking explosives.
I'm rubbing my head. Like, they just escalate this to the nth degree for no reason that they provide within the narrative except internment bad. You have to do better than that, but that's just it. This was a message episode. They didn't feel like they had to do better than that. You know? The audience knows this is bad. You've read the news. Therefore, you don't need a further explanation. And that's part of the problem when you do these kinds of message episodes, and you know the timing of the thing that you messaged to fades. It's like watching old ass episodes of Law and Order. Because like sometimes you hit those
the rip from the headlines
ones, you can, and if you like, you know what that's based off of, and it gets real fucking weird because it's so like linked to a very specific point in time. It's that fucking problem.
So if they beam down explosives, they get a little plan together. Archer gets everybody riled up and says, hey, I've got a way out of here. Conveniently, at this internment camp, there's also a hangar just filled with getaway cars ready to go,
including the shuttle pod, because we can't lose any.
Yeah, so we're gonna stir some shit up here, and it's gonna be go time. There's a couple Suliban that are like, this seems like a bad idea. You've got some throwaway dialogue between Mayweather and this guy about, you know, don't preconceived notions, racism, bias, all that other stuff. By the end, they're BFFs. The part of this episode that really killed me is that when Archer's basically selling Mayweather on the stupid plan, but there's kids in here. There's kids. Think of the kids. Mayweather, think of the kids. Think of the children.
You mean the children that are presently safe and that we're going to imperil them through a jailbreak? Those kids?
Which is great. Or like the kids that you were content to have die of AIDS back over in the
back on Dear Doctor? I mean,
yes, yeah. the fucking kids. Of course, Archer, the advocate of the children.
We have to make a pledge that after season one, we have to let Dear Doctor go.
Veto.
We
never forget.
We can use it for the rest of season one. We have to let it go at some point, man. We have to.
Damn,
I let go of Scorpion. You have to let go of this.
I can fit Deer on one set of knuckles, but I can't do.
Just tattoo it on.
Yeah, Dear Dog. That'd be cool fist tattoos, right? And I will continue to beat Enterprise up with those because this fits the profile. I mean, minus the fact that now all of a sudden he just had a change of heart about the kids. Forgive me for not singing. I'm fighting a cold right now. But Cap, I thought you didn't care about kids. We let all those other ones about to die. No, I've had a change of my heart. So they set up some explosives. Mayweather pops off to the mean bald guard.
Oh, they put Reed in makeup. They put Reed in
green face.
Yes. In green face. So he shows up to like help out, and then
he beams down.
Tucker does strafing runs in the other shuttle pod to blow up like the gun emplacements.
Can we? Okay, so it's go time. We're gonna do the jailbreak and cut loose, and we're gonna have a bunch of civilians go against the military or whatever the fuck, and we're gonna see how that works out. Also, for the the second time ever, we do have the military superiority with our slightly better guns. Am I to believe that the fucking shuttlecraft has phasers?
Yes.
So the ship flew out without phasers, and it got its ass kicked a lot because its fucking torpedoes suck. But the two shuttle pods have like, for the time, Death Star lasers attached to them that could just wreck shit royally. And never at any point do they think, hey, maybe we should either like deploy the shuttles during a fight, or I don't know, like duct tape the shuttles on the nacelles of the ships so we have like guns.
I mean, I think they just decided that they wanted to do the bombing run, and they weren't going to make up new effects for the shuttle pod weapons, and they just decided to use the phaser effects. Like, that's probably as far as I went. Like, yeah, they probably got phasers on them now. They've put them on, like whatever.
There's an amusing scene before they actually start the fight where T'Pol, they show up. Dean Stockwell figures out they're up there. He calls, hey, what's going on? I'm still trying to be reasonable. T'Pol's like inviting him to dinner, and then giving him the Vulcan database, which seems real reckless to use that as a weapon and just like, I'm going to drop so much knowledge on you, it's going to, I don't know, fuck up your sensors for a little bit, but hey, here's all our info for free,
so we can beam down Reed with the bombs.
Sneak him in, yeah.
But yeah, they do the attack run, and then what was really weird to me at the end was all of the major Suliban characters are basically unaccounted for. So remember, like, Seijin, who's like the main one.
The guy who's looking for his wife and has a daughter.
No, that's Danik. Danik is the main one. He gets pinned down in the common room, and then Seijin is the one that's buddies with Mayweather. And like, he goes to rescue him, and then you never see what happens. Like, I guess everyone made it to the shuttle pods, I guess. Like, they don't actually show anything occur with, like, all of the characters we've met.
The consequences aren't important, Joe. It's just, the important part is that Archer shows you that he's a good dude by causing a stir. What happens exactly where somehow Colonel Grok or Dean Stockwell ends up in a room with a gun, and then has this little fist fight with Archer, and they make it clear that like the Suliban and Archer could kill him, but they leave him alone, and he's like quivering in fear, and like has this moment where he like realizes like they showed mercy. Like, what, he already knows these aren't bad guys.
Yeah, we were all reasonable here. Like, you in fact were just explaining to Archer like you haven't actually helped these people. Now they're going to be like out there in this bullshit. What if they get desperate and they choose to turn to the fucking Cabal? You're like, this isn't helping.
There's two parts of the Cabal I didn't understand. One, they make a claim that the Cabal will try to aggressively recruit. And the other was that the Cabal was actually at odds with the civilian population and might even be like attacking and killing them regardless, which one of those seems pretty serious, and I would have liked to get a little bit more information on that. But like, there's no change of heart or realization to be had for the bad guy. He already knows this place is full of civilians. He's genetically tested them. He doesn't like the fact they're imprisoned, and he understands that they're not killers. He's just trying to keep things. And I hate, we're sitting here like apologizing for the devil and trying to like downplay, but this is the fucking way the episodes have been presented. It's ridiculous. It makes Archer out to be a terrorist yet again, a stupid one at that. It's not even like he's it's just a wild morality hair up his ass. Like, he's actively the actions he's taking not only are a detriment in that, like, it identifies Starfleet as a hostile faction, but like, here's critical information you could have gotten about the fucking time temporal Cold War and these shape-shifting bad guys. Like, nothing he does makes any fucking sense, and it all comes back to exactly what you said. Either these Suliban had to have some fucking great reason that Archer had to do a jailbreak to get them all out, or this needed to be not an internment camp. This needed to be fucking Auschwitz.
I think that would have been probably the easier way to go, right? Like,
or if you want this series to be bold, where sometimes the characters make decisions that you aren't comfortable with, or they make the wrong decisions, and that this is a learning process, right? Like, Dear Doctor, like, take all the hate I have for it aside. They made a decision, and maybe the decision was not the right one, and they have to live with the consequences of that. Have this prison break fall on its face. Have a lot of good people die, have the guards get everything under control, and all of this ridiculous jailbreak shit all be a big waste of time, and Archer have to sit there in his ready room being like, man, I really fucked that one
up. Yeah, no, I completely agree. That would have been a better way to go. That his hubris to put his moral stamp on something gets people killed.
T'Pol goes in there and says, why did you do that? What did that bring you? We have to follow the cultures and the rules of other societies. If you want to be a part of the galactic community and you want people to expect, or respect Starfleet and the way Earth does things, you got to do the same for them. And this is why you can't just go around putting your dick in everybody's mashed potatoes. This cowboy shit gets people killed, and you got to learn a lesson. This is a hard lesson you got to learn now.
Instead, it's just, yay, episode's over. It sucked.
Look at me. I virtue signaled the Suliban. What's Suliban? I don't know. Fuck them. Hey, listen, we put bombs on a wall, made them beep so the guards would go over there and look at it so we could specifically blow it up in their fucking faces and then dip.
Yep. What are we watching next week, Peter?
Season 1, episode 22. Vox Sola. There's Trip covered in cum. I don't know. He's glued. A strange alien creature comes aboard the Enterprise and captures several crew members in its jizz-like web. With her crewmates' lives in jeopardy, Hoshi faces her biggest challenge yet in trying to communicate with the life form in order to return it to its home planet. Why don't you beam it into space with the transporter? They should just break the fucking transporter. What the transporter at this point could solve so many plot things. I don't think they've made it dangerous enough. I think it needs to be fucking up constantly moving cargo to reinforce why we cannot use this thing. And when it fucks up, have it blow up the knock out entire power grids and have them stranded in space.
The fact that they used it in an emergency beam up situation and wound up beaming twigs into someone's head, I think did communicate some of what we needed to see.
Sure, maybe that's why we don't use that on children and the elderly. But when it's Ferengi attackers or a fucking the queen alien cocooning people so face huggers can jump them, I think it's safe to beam that stuff. And if it kills it, chalk that up as a win. That okay, well, at least the transporter turned it inside out, so it died before the vacuum of space had a chance to kill it. Take this episode and then you compare it over to fucking stupid Acquisition and the way Archer acts, and he treats some things super serious, and we're going to war, and we're gonna cause this jailbreak and maybe put Starfleet at war with the fucking Suluban's other enemies, versus, hey, dudes are stealing our fucking thermonuclear warhead torpedoes and trying to sell my friends into sex slavery.
Yeah,
let's have a rip-roaring good time jerking them around.
Yeah.
No big deal. Enterprise is getting awful. Enterprise started really strong, and Enterprise is getting fucking miserable.
I'm glad that we could have this catharsis for you. I'm glad you were able to just to vent these feelings, Peter. It's what the people desire. It's what they come here for. And next week, speaking of come, we'll see the jizz monster. So thank you for listening to VG Please, and we will see you next week.